The sky over Arizona burned with the colors of a fading sun as Jacob, a poor farmer with calloused hands and a tired heart, stood beside the broken fence of his small field. Life had never given him much, no family, no children, barely enough food to survive. Every night, he ate in silence and slept to the sound of the desert wind. His neighbors whispered that some men were meant to live alone, and Jacob believed it, until the morning he found a wounded Apache woman lying beside the creek, her breathing soft but full of hidden storms. She had an arrow wound on her shoulder and a look of fierce pride in her eyes, even as she struggled to sit up. Jacob, startled but compassionate, knelt beside her and offered water. The Apache woman hesitated. Her people had never trusted white men, but his voice was gentle, almost apologetic, like a man carrying years of sorrow. She drank slowly, watching his every movement. When Jacob lifted her carefully onto his horse, she didn't resist. For the first time in many years, Jacob felt the presence of someone who needed him, and strangely, it made him feel alive again. Inside his cabin, he tended to her wound with trembling hands. She didn't speak, but her eyes told stories, of battles, loss, and exile. Jacob asked for her name. After long silence, she whispered, Nayeli. She looked around at the humble cabin, the cracked walls, the single chair, the small window where the sunlight washed everything in gold. This place, she said, is lonely. Jacob nodded. He didn't have to explain, loneliness was his only companion for years. He offered her his bed and slept on the floor, as the desert night wrapped them both in cold silence. Days passed, and Nayeli slowly regained her strength. She was unlike anyone Jacob had ever met, quiet yet untamed, fierce yet graceful. She would sit outside at dawn, listening to the wind, as if waiting for distant drums. Jacob cooked simple meals and tried to hide his curiosity, but everything about her was mysterious. One morning, she finally spoke. You helped me, she said. But you do not ask why I was running. Jacob looked at her with tired eyes and replied, sometimes a man doesn't need to know the past to care about the present. Those words stayed with her. But fate had its own plans. One evening, as Jacob was working in the field, he noticed smoke on the horizon, Apache signal fires. Nayeli saw them too. Her face changed. Fear mixed with determination. They are looking for me, she said. Jacob asked if it was dangerous for her to stay. She didn't answer directly, only whispering, your kindness may cost you everything. That night, she stayed awake, pacing near the window while Jacob slept, unaware that warriors might already be tracking her scent through the desert sand. The next morning, she tried to leave without saying goodbye. But Jacob found her saddling his horse. Why are you running? He asked. Nayeli's voice trembled for the first time. Because danger follows me, and I must not bring death to a man who does not deserve it. Jacob gently held the reins and said, I have been alone all my life. If death comes, then at least it will know I once cared for someone. Those words struck her heart like an arrow, because no warrior had ever spoken to her with such quiet courage before. That afternoon, as the sun burned hotter, Nayeli finally told her secret. Her tribe had forced her to marry a cruel warrior chief. She refused, and escaped. The chief vowed to hunt her down. Jacob listened in silence, his heart aching. She was not just wounded in body, she was wounded in spirit. The world had taken her freedom, just as it had taken Jacob's dreams. Two people from different worlds, but both carrying invisible scars. That night, she lit a small fire outside the cabin and stared at the stars, whispering prayers in Apache tongue. Jacob sat beside her, unsure if he should speak. She asked quietly, why are you alone? Jacob hesitated, then admitted that his wife had died in childbirth years ago. He waited for a child who never survived. Since then, he built fences, but never repaired his heart. Nayeli looked at him with softened eyes, realizing his pain ran deeper than the land beneath their feet. In that moment, something fragile and unspoken grew between them, a connection neither expected, but both needed more than air itself. But the desert is full of eyes. And whispers. 3 Apache scouts had already found Jacob's footprints near the creek where Nayeli was first discovered. From the shadows, they watched the cabin, studying Jacob's every movement. To them, he was an outsider who might have kidnapped one of their own. They did not know the truth, that he had saved her life. And they certainly did not care. Warriors saw threat before mercy. Soon, They would report to their chief, the one Naeli feared most. Meanwhile, life in the cabin began to change. Jacob felt hope returning, like water slowly filling a dry well. Naeli started helping with chores, preparing meals, even repairing his broken tools. Sometimes they didn't speak for hours, but silence between them felt peaceful, not lonely. One evening, as Jacob returned from the field, he saw her feeding a wounded bird. It reminded him of himself, tired, lost, but still breathing. In that moment, Jacob realized, her presence was healing him faster than his medicine healed her. But healing always invites challenge. The next day, Jacob found a mark on the tree near his cabin, an Apache tracking sign. His blood ran cold. He knew the meaning. Someone had found them. When he told Naeli, her face turned pale. "They are close," she whispered. Jacob asked if she wanted to leave, but her voice changed, stronger than ever before. "I will not run anymore." Jacob stared at her in awe. She was no longer the wounded woman he found by the creek. She was a warrior, ready to face her fate. The following night, thunder rolled across the sky. Jacob prepared his old rifle, though his hands shook. Naeli tied her hair back and sharpened a knife. They didn't speak, but their silence spoke of courage. Jacob looked at her and said, "Whatever happens, you do not face it alone." Naeli felt tears burning in her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. Somewhere deep within, she made a decision that would change both their lives forever. A decision neither expected. Near midnight, footsteps approached the cabin. Jacob and Naeli stood side by side in the darkness, their hearts pounding. She slowly turned to Jacob and whispered words that felt heavier than the storm outside. "Whatever comes tomorrow, remember this, I choose you to be the father." Jacob froze, not understanding at first. But the depth in her eyes said everything. She wasn't speaking of today. She was speaking of a future. A possibility. A hope neither of them had dared to dream. And that was when the door slowly began to open. Jacob's heart raced as the door creaked open. Moonlight revealed a group of Apache warriors, their faces painted, eyes sharp and unyielding. Naeli stepped forward, standing taller than he had ever seen her, her knife glinting in the silver light. "They are mine to face," she said calmly, but Jacob could not let her do it alone. He tightened his grip on his rifle, feeling the weight of a life he never thought would matter suddenly resting on his shoulders. The leader of the warriors stepped into view, a giant man with piercing eyes that reminded Jacob of the desert storms. "You have taken her," the chief's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Naeli's voice cut through the tension. "I am not taken. I am free. And he helped me." The chief's gaze swept over Jacob, sizing him up, measuring his courage, but mostly searching for weakness. Jacob swallowed hard and met his stare, unflinching. The chief laughed, a sound that sent shivers down Jacob's spine, but it was not entirely cruel. "You would protect her?" he asked, half mocking. Jacob nodded. "She saved me too," he said simply. Naeli stepped closer to him. "This man is not just a friend. He is family. He is my choice." Her words were bold, defiant, and the chief saw the fire in her eyes. For a tense moment, silence fell. The desert wind howled outside, carrying sand like a warning. Then the chief's voice softened, just slightly. "You are brave, farmer. But bravery alone does not decide the heart of a warrior woman." Naeli's eyes flicked to Jacob, and he realized that the next words could either shatter their fragile world or cement it forever. Naeli spoke with quiet certainty. "I choose him. Not because he is strong, but because he is kind. Because he saw me when no one else would. That is more powerful than any warrior's sword." The chief's eyes narrowed, scanning her face for hesitation. Finding none, he paused, then nodded slowly, a mixture of respect and disbelief in his gaze. The tension broke like a wave. One of the younger warriors laughed softly, shaking his head. "She has chosen," he said. The chief finally smiled, a rare, full smile. "Then you are a man of worth," he said to Jacob. "Protect her well. And perhaps one day, she will teach your people the strength of freedom." Jacob exhaled, relief flooding through him like rain after a drought. Naeli approached Jacob, her hand brushing his. "I told you," she whispered, "I choose you to be the father." Jacob's eyes widened. "Father. Naeli, are you saying?" She nodded, her smile gentle but resolute. Tears stung his eyes. He had never dreamed of this moment, not children, not family, not love, and yet, Here it was, alive, impossible, and beautiful. The chief raised his hand, signaling the warriors to retreat. Go, he commanded. Live your life. Protect each other. And when the sun rises tomorrow, let the desert witness your courage. The warriors vanished into the shadows, leaving Jacob and Nayeli alone under the moon. The silence was heavy but comforting, filled with the promise of new beginnings. Jacob took Nayeli's hands in his. I never imagined this life, he admitted. I thought I was destined to be alone. Nayeli cupped his face. Loneliness is for those who forget to hope, she said. We found each other. That is enough for now. He nodded, letting the truth of her words settle deep inside, like seeds finally taking root in dry soil. That night, they sat outside, the desert sky stretching endlessly above them. Stars reflected in their eyes as they planned a future neither dared to imagine before. A small cabin, children running barefoot across fields, the smell of earth and fire, a life built on courage, hope, and love. The hardships had not vanished, but they had each other, and for the first time, that was more than enough. Weeks later, the first signs of spring painted the land green. Jacob worked the fields while Nayeli taught him Apache ways, tracking, healing herbs, and respect for the wind and sun. They laughed, argued, shared stories of past wounds and future dreams. Their connection deepened, stronger than fear, stronger than loss. Every day, they discovered a new reason to stay, a new reason to fight for each other. One morning, Nayeli placed her hand over Jacob's. I think, she began, her voice trembling with hope, it's time to tell you something. Jacob looked at her, sensing the weight of the moment. Her other hand rested on her belly, and in that instant, realization struck him like lightning. Child, he breathed, barely daring to hope. She nodded, tears shining, her smile radiant and fearless. Jacob fell to his knees, overwhelmed with emotion. We made it, he whispered, we actually made it. Nayeli knelt beside him, wrapping her arms around him. We chose each other, she said softly. And now we choose our family. The desert wind carried their laughter across the plains, as if blessing their union, as if even the land itself recognized the miracle of survival, love, and hope. The sun rose high that day, spilling gold over the fields and cabin. Children's laughter echoed in the distance, not yet born, but already imagined. Jacob and Nayeli stood side by side, hands intertwined, hearts intertwined. The past scars remained, but they were reminders of courage and resilience, not chains. They were free. Together. As the day closed, Jacob whispered to Nayeli, thank you for choosing me. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. No, she said softly. Thank you for being worthy of my choice. And for the first time, both knew that destiny was not cruel, it was simply waiting for the right hearts to claim it. In the vast, unforgiving desert, they had found something rarer than survival, love, family, and hope.